And, well, you know, everybody thinks about Anthony Weiner, and all they think about is the fact that he got caught tweeting a picture, several pictures of himself in, sexually suggestive poses. Let's just put it that way. But there's a lot more to that story, and there's a lot more to Anthony Weiner than just that one sort of punchline. I want to take you back to that week of the first week of June 2011 when Anthony Weiner, the walls were closing in on him. This is cut 20, Dave Kimber. Anthony Weiner tried to laugh a lot of this off, in fact, in a very crude way. And you're going to hear reporter from Washington Times Emily Miller confront him at the end of this quick passage.
You know, this is part of the problem with the way this has progressed, and one of the reasons why I was, perhaps you'll forgive me, a little bit stiff yesterday. What? We've used the word firm. What? Can I ask, is there a Weiner gag that hasn't been done in this context?
You're making them all, though.
Good point, Emily Miller. And Emily Miller now joins us from the Washington Times. Thanks for being here this morning, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, Emily, Anthony Weiner is just a politician who made a private mistake. It's between him and his wife. He just tweeted a picture of his junk. What's the problem?
Well, obviously, as a member of Congress who was lying repeatedly, and it wasn't just one time, he repeatedly texted pictures of his private parts to women as a sitting member of Congress, and let's talk about appropriateness of that, using his official account, using his office, and then repeatedly lying to the public, to reporters. But as you said,
but just a private personal failing, though, and just a private personal failing. What I mean, that's it has nothing to do with the way he treats women in the workplace or women that he.
That's, my point here. What happened then was not a private failing because he's a member of Congress. At that interview I did with him, I was standing outside the doors of the floor. It's called the Speaker's Lobby. It's where the reporters can sit next to the members of Congress. He came out there, blatantly lied about using his email. It wasn't just one time. He was repeated. We found out later. The point, though, of my story now that he's running for Congress, now he's running for mayor of New York, his wife wants to keep him. Not doesn't want to do it. That's his business. That's their business. But my point is that his disrespect for women wasn't just sending naked pictures of himself to strange women. He treated women in the workplace horribly. And it was, as it was announced, a colleague of mine at the Washington Times, Susan Crabtree, and I were comparing stories. I said, I was standing in the Speaker's lobby. He came out. I was the only one there, and he came right up to me, and he stood just inches from me, extremely close, made me very uncomfortable. And as the crowd of reporters pulled around him, I couldn't get away. And as you can hear from that tape, and the full audio is on our website, Washington Times, he kept repeatedly making these sexual jokes, and I kept saying, stop. I kept saying, you're making me so uncomfortable. I kept saying, you're a member of Congress. Think where you are. I mean, he wouldn't stop. It was bright red. He was actually obviously taking pleasure in it. It was making me so uncomfortable. Susan Crabtree's experience was she wrote a story that he didn't like. She had well-sourced it. He didn't like what she said. And as you can read, as I wrote, explained why what she wrote about him was completely accurate. So she was walking through the Speaker's lobby, and he came up to her and got angry at her and started berating her for doing this. And as she walked away in front of everyone, he gave her the finger. So this is, I haven't found any male colleagues who've had bad experiences with Anthony Weiner. So I think it's important for people to understand that they are thinking about electing someone as mayor of the city who treats women like dirt, which was my headline.
Well, I think this is all worth consideration. But the thing that sort of resonates with me is in addition to making, having this incredible lapse of judgment to send his junk out on his Twitter account. And having perhaps some personal failings and being putting women treating them as sexual objects or objects of harassment. There is this issue of he lied about it. He lied time and time and time and time again. And as Larry is often fond of pointing out, he basically hung Andrew Breitbart out to dry on this thing.
It was unbelievable. I mean, remember as the story unfolded, and it all came back to me as I was writing this recent story, and he's running for mayor, and I went back and looked at what I wrote. It were days and days and days of his going to reporters, laughing, joking, I didn't do it, absolutely not, I didn't send anything out. And, it unveiled, it wasn't just that Twitter photo. There were years of him doing this with women that all doing it. And he has said in recent interviews that in New York that he thinks more photos could come out of him. So it was a long pattern, and the blatant lying. I mean, it's almost sociopathic the way he did it.
But he says he's learned from his mistakes.
Which mistakes has he learned? Well, number one, which mistakes has he learned from? My point of view is, if you have been a member of Congress, I mean, it wasn't just Republicans who wanted him out. Nancy Pelosi wanted him out. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's head of the DCCC, the leading, person in their fundraising efforts, said, "Get out."
Yeah.
So it was both sides of the aisle. Women were like, "We don't want you in Washington. You're embarrassment to all of us. Go." And the fact that after just only not even 2 years, he now thinks that everyone is going to forget this. Everyone's going to forget the 15 years he was in Congress treating women terribly. I mean, you can go back to Vanity Fair has this story in 2001 about interns on Capitol Hill, and it follows interns around. And in one of the scenes, Anthony Weiner, then a congressman, goes up to these interns and starts asking for their number and tries to take them out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, his pattern of treating women terribly has gone back so far, and yet he just is so power hungry and so narcissistic. He can't stop himself. He has to be in power. And, that's true for a lot of politicians, quite frankly, but some that are so despicable like him, I think, the public needs constant reminders of what's going on.
Emily Miller, we have 30 seconds, but I need you to respond to one other thing. Donald Trump tweeted your article out and said this is really worth reading, and suddenly a bunch of reporters, one from BuzzFeed, one from Politico, I think, they started making fun of Donald Trump, saying, "Oh, twice divorced Donald Trump," like he has anything to say about how men treat women. What's your response to that? Is there any equivocation there?
I was furious. I was absolutely furious because, as I said to those male reporters on Twitter, being divorced is not the issue. I mean, we have divorced people all over the place in power. The difference is treating women in the workplace terribly and treating them with complete disrespect and harassing them. And Donald Trump, who I've interviewed and is a wonderful man and so kind and so respectful, actually quite different than his public persona, I thought. Nothing like when I walked away from Anthony Weiner and was shaking and bright red and so upset.
Yeah,
so
they're drawing this
really
equivalence that Donald Trump is in no place to comment on Anthony Weiner. He's basically saying that they're the same. It's absolutely disgusting.
And it's these liberals who will do anything to defend Anthony Weiner.
That's what we seem to see. Emily Miller, thanks so much for your courage, and I know that it probably was not a very easy thing for you to write, and I really appreciate you writing it, and I hope it gets more traction.
And I hope people in New York pay attention.
Well,
we'll see.
We'll send it to them. All right.
Okay.